Erev Tov Bagyam. Good morning in Naples, where they may still be serving brunch somewhere if you could get in. But you're with us here, and have we got some end of the year countdown for you? You made the right decision today to be with America-Israel Friendship League. We are culminating a year of virtual travel with our friend Reuven Solomon, who has taken us to places like the one behind me and the one behind him today that bring joy to all of us. So season's greetings, Happy New Year almost, and we're glad you're with us today. Let us know where you're calling in from. I'm seeing Ibiza, I'm seeing Staten Island, I'm seeing people from around the world who have chosen to sort of lean in. Hey, Carlo in Miami, glad to have you with us. We're grateful for all of our friends who have traveled with us from Persephone, Oakland, Modi'in, Brooklyn, Frankfurt, Toronto, Bergen County, Texas, Switzerland. I love it. California, San Francisco, Hartford, Connecticut, Fort Lauderdale, West Bloomfield, Michigan, Boston. We have got the whole world covered today because we know we can't just hop on a plane now. Unfortunately, St. Lucie, Brooklyn, Ottawa, London, Boca Raton, fellow Boca Ratonian, thanks, Toronto, New Orleans, Indianapolis, Chicago. Wow, I know it's cold there. It's warm here. It's going to be warm on our webinar today. And here's just one little present. You can call it a Christmas present. You can call it a New Year's present. You can call it just a present from AIFL. Stay until the very end of this episode. I promise you, you want to hear and see one of the most inspiring stories you'll get for the entire year. Okay, that's all I'm saying, Reuven. That's all I'm saying. Just stay till the end. Reuven, you're going to take us to a place that I love. I love to visit. And I'm so glad that it was your choice to end this year together at Gamla. So take us away.
Shalom, Wayne, and shalom to all our friends of the AIFL. It's such a pleasure to be back with you again. And this time, back in the Golan Heights at Gamla. Gamla, that you see in the background, will be looking like that in 3 or 4 weeks' time with the rain we've had. Otherwise, it's going to be up until the rain takes hold and the green returns. It's going to look a little more like the screen that you're going to see that introduces our tour today.
Reuven, you shared just before we started that it's been raining cats and dogs, so that's a good thing in Israel, right?
It's a fantastic thing. It's been, we've really had 1/3 of our annual rainfall in a week. It's fantastic. I want to begin by hoping that you all enjoyed a wonderful Christmas holiday and wishing you in advance a healthy, happy, and prosperous new year coming up. Today, we are going to start our tour at Gamla, and following our tour at Gamla, we will also fit in a visit to Katsrin. And I purposely chose these two sites because Gamla, or Gamala, as Josephus sometimes called it, was the capital of the Golan Heights. And today, Katsrin is the capital of the Golan Heights. And we'll talk about that when we get to Katsrin. But first and foremost, let's start with our tour to Gamla, that as I said, we know a lot about from Yosef ben Matityahu, Josephus, who you may know was the general of the Galilee who's before the Jewish war with the Romans was in charge of strengthening the fortifications in the north, in the Galilee. And he writes a lot about Gamla and gives us a tremendous amount of information that I'm going to try and impart some of to you today. But let's begin with the history of Gamla. Gamla goes back to the Bronze Age and before, and it is, of course, placed, as you see on the map in front of you, In the central part of the Golan Heights, there are two dots of red that point out the two sites that we're going to be visiting today. The lower one, the reserve, Gamla Nature Reserve, or Gamala Nature Reserve, as Josephus sometimes calls it, and the one above, Katsrin, the new capital of the Golan Heights. Gamla actually has remains from the early Bronze Age, and also has fields of dolmens that we will be talking about that date 5,000 years ago, stone tombs from the early Bronze Age farmers, and we know they were farmers because of farming flint tools that were found in the remains there, used as their burial place. But the part of history of Gamla that we're going to be focusing on is the Jewish settlement in Gamla that actually begins, most believe, with the return to Zion after the Babylonian dispersion and exile. And this may also allow some understanding of why some of the spellings in the coins and the pronunciation and the spelling of Gamla or Gamala has the Babylonian imprint. So as late as or as early as the return of the exiles from Babylon following the decree of Cyrus the Persian, who allows the conquered peoples back to their land, in the 4th, 5th century BC, of course, there is some Jewish presence in Gamla, in the area. Now, what happens is after the Greeks take over from the Persians and the Seleucids become the rulers, the Seleucids are the authority in Gamla, but there are Jews living in Gamla who are joined by many, many more after the Hasmonean conquest. Alexander Jannaeus, the Hasmonean, conquers and Gamla and all of that area in the Hasmonean victory against the Seleucid Empire, and that area becomes part of Hasmonean kingdom. That's when Gamla grows, but in 63 BC, when the Roman period starts with the Roman general Pompey, he makes a big change with the area and carves away the central and northern part of the Golan Heights from the territories of the Hasmoneans and hands them over to a tribe of an Arab tribe of Iturians who manage the area until, of course, Herod the Great comes along, and in around 20 BC, Augustus Caesar gives this area back into the control of Herod the Great. And Herod the Great, wanting to settle this new area that he has been given back, settles many Jews in the area, in villages, and this is the great growth of Gamla from 20 BC onwards. In the following slides, you're going to see how in this period Gamla is built up and improved, and I'll point out the different periods of development in Gamla with the slides that are going to follow. Here you see a slide of what will give you the indication of where the name comes from, Gamla. So, as I said, Josephus refers to it as Gamla and also as Gamala, which is the Aramaic, if you like, Babylonian name for Gamla, Gamala, but it comes from the same root word, the meaning Gamal or Gamala in Aramaic, camel. And the reason for that, Josephus tells us, is because from certain angles, one can see the outline of a camel with its long neck and head bobbing up and its hump and the sides that fall away. This is an ideal place for a protected city, because there is only really one access to it, one area of access to it that you are seeing on easy access. The rest of it is cut off by deep gorges. And in the following slides, I'm going to be able to show you a few more views of Gamla and how it was a naturally protected city. Here in this slide, you're seeing at the top right-hand corner a round tower. That is predates the wall that you see stretching down from it. The wall stretching down from that round tower was built just prior to the Jewish war with the Romans, and it was built by the man who tells us a lot of the story, Josephus, Yosef ben Matityahu, as Jewish general of the Galilee, strengthening the fortifications of the Galilee villages. He comes and he completes the fortification from the much older round tower, building a couple of square towers further down, as you can see, and filling the space in between some of the houses and the approach to Gamla by a wall that has basalt blocks, some of them 6 meters in thickness. I mean, enormous, strengthened walls in preparation for the war that was to come. Next slides, you will see a close-up of where a break in the wall, a breach in the wall is made. And around this part, the archaeologists found a tremendous amount of arrowheads and ballistra balls, basalt, catapult, ballistra. And this apparently damage in the wall here was made by a battering ram in one of the 2 Roman attacks on Gamla that we're going to be talking about in just a moment, because a grappling hook was actually found, Roman grappling hook that was actually found, that was used in scaling and sieging walls. In the next couple of slides, you're going to see some of the construction in Gamla. Here you see a close-up of where the battering ram did some of its work. And in the following slides, in an area right beside the most beautiful building in Gamla, probably one of the oldest synagogues in the world, is a wealthy quarter, we call it, in Gamla, of some more luxurious homes. And in the following slides, you're going to see some close-ups of some elements of these homes, and especially the synagogue. Here is an overview of the synagogue. Beautiful, beautifully laid out building. It dates to, there's a little bit of debate about it, but it dates to, by most accounts, the 1st century BC, while the temple, of course, was still standing and stood all the way through until this synagogue's destruction. So this synagogue was not used for worship. It was typical of the synagogues used in that time for gathering, for teaching, for reading the Torah, but not for worship. And thus, it is not directly oriented for the, there was no ark with the Torah in it, because the scrolls would have been kept in a scroll room and not in a Torah ark as it's done in synagogues today. And the Torah ark in synagogues today would have you stand before the ark facing Jerusalem if the synagogue is in Jerusalem. Since this synagogue was not used for worship, it is not oriented directly towards Jerusalem.
Reuven?
Yes, sir.
we already have some questions coming in about the structures you're showing in terms of what kind of stone is used. And I mean, this stuff has held up really well over time. Are there quarries nearby? Are they bringing this from elsewhere, the Romans?
Great question. No, it's all local volcanic basalt rock. That's why it's dark and the way. It's hard rock, hard to cut and quarry, but stands up to time and to attack very, very well. So it's all local.
And is this similar? Is this similar also to the what was used at Masada? I know Gamla is referred to as the Masada of the North. Is it actually similar stone?
No, not at all. Not at all. Masada is limestone and limestone with hardened limestone with quartz, whereas this is lava rock, volcanic rock. So its reputation as the Masada of the North comes from different angles, and we'll talk about that shortly. But in the following slides, I want to show you a few more of this this structure here. This is a good view of the synagogue length. It is actually, as we said, one of the oldest synagogues in the world, if you like, because we're talking about 1st century BC. We know that in the time of AD or CE, in the time of Jesus, there were many Galilean synagogues, but this one was one of the early ones. Here you see some of the capitals and pillars from the synagogue, and you can see on the right-hand side decorations that give us a little bit of a reminder of much, much earlier decorations of capitals from the time of Solomon and from the time of King David that we have on the 5-shekel coin. Here by the synagogue, we find a mikveh, and of course, that's pretty important to have. Ritual purification bath by the synagogue. In the following slides, you're going to see the area around the synagogue, which, as I said, was a wealthy neighborhood, well-built houses, so well built that they stood up very nicely. And right close by, this is one of the two large olive oil production presses. What you're seeing here, of course, are the weights of the olive oil and the plant itself. We're going to be talking, you're seeing the weights of the beam press here, and we're going to be talking in our next visit to Katsrin, when we get there, about olive oil production if we have time. But here in this area around the synagogue, as I said, 2 large olive oil presses. But you know, the real story of Gamla that makes it comparable to Masada is this illustration that you're looking at in front of you. You remember the round tower, and you remember the wall that Josephus actually helped construct from the much earlier round lookout tower to the only part of Gamla that was accessible, the only road into the city. And the wall is built in preparation of the Jewish revolt. Now, Gamla would have had a population perhaps of 3,000 to 4,000 Jews in normal times, but during and before the revolt against the Romans, many of the other less protected villages would come into Gamla and thus swell its population to something like 9,000, Josephus tells us. There's an epic story of the battle that takes place at this site, and it actually begins with King Agrippa, who was under, of course, the Roman authority, putting a siege on Gamla, but unsuccessful, and giving the siege up. And we're talking about prior to the 66 CE Great Revolt. But Vespasian comes along, and he knows that Gamla has to fall if the Romans are going to suppress this Jewish rebellion. Here, a story of epic proportion takes place with the Romans attacking the Gamla, and the Gamla defenders trapping the Romans in a maneuver that as the defenders race uphill to the dwelling places and the narrow streets in between the houses in the high places of Gamla, the Roman soldiers pour in after them, heedless and in not knowing exactly where they were going, until the defenders turn around and attack their attackers. This is when a great disaster befalls the Romans. They are unfamiliar with the territory. They race onto the, these houses are built one on top of the other in terrace fashion. And they actually race on top of the roofs of these houses, and the roofs start to collapse. And the Romans are dealt a tremendous defeat. I'm going to read just a couple of sentences from Josephus, who describes what the Romans bring battering rams to 3 several places and made the walls shake and fall. After rushing in, they fell into a trap, and most of the Romans were killed inside the city due to the falling houses and the pressure of the defenders. By this means, a vast number of Romans perished. Now, this causes a total and disgraceful defeat for the Romans that Vespasian corrects by a speech that he gives to them, that every coach of sport or teams should read, because, and I want to read a little bit of this speech to you, if I may, because it's a classic. Vespasian says to his soldiers, defeat, what might happen to anyone, you must face, he said, like men. Remember, it is the nature of war that bloodless victories do not happen, and fortune is a fickle-footed ally. You have killed thousands and thousands of Jews, and her ladyship has only exacted a token payment. If it is vulgar to crow over victory, it is just as cowardly to whine under defeat. You never know how long either will last. A first-class soldier never lets success go to his head. That is why failure never lets him down. As for recent events, they were not due to any slackness of ours or to Jewish prowess. Their gain and our loss came both from the difficulty of the ground. With that in mind, you may be blamed for your reckless impetuosity. When the enemy retired to higher ground, you should have restrained yourself and not run your heads into danger that hung over you. As you were the masters of the lower town, you should have gradually entered the enemy down to where you could meet them safely on firm ground. Instead, in your headlong dash for victory, you forgot all about safety. Such recklessness in war, such crazy impetuosity is foreign to us Romans, who win all our victories by efficiency and discipline. It is the vice of backward races and the chief cause of Jewish defeat. Well then, it is up to us to rely once more on our own superiority and to see red rather than be down in the mouth about an unlucky reverse. The best encouragement each of you will find is in his own right arm, and it is how you can avenge and kill the killed and punish the killers. For my own part, I shall try in this and every battle to be the first to get to the enemy and the last to leave the field. And with this, Vespasian takes his men to, he takes them away to another battle, a very easy one on Mount Tabor, where they have an easy conquest. And it's only after the easy conquest that he brings them back to Gamla, where in determined Roman fashion, they break through the walls of the city and conquer the city. Josephus writes that some 4,000 Jews of the 9,000 are killed in the fighting by the Romans, and the other 5,000 either fall off collapsing rooftops, jump off, or are pushed off to their deaths. And the defeat is absolutely thorough. Gamla, it falls away in the wastes of time and is lost for 1900 years. And it's only in 1967 that Gamla is rediscovered, excavated, and the story that Josephus tells us in his book, The Jewish War, is proved very accurately. You know, one of the excavators, one of the archaeologists of Gamla was Shmaryahu Gutman, who was actually a brilliant archaeologist of Israel, along with Igal Yadin. And he writes something very expressive about this battle with the Romans. I did not understand what moved the defenders of the fortress until we found a coin minted in the besieged city on which it was written, "Deliverance to Holy Jerusalem." The defenders of the city believed that by stopping the enemy on the Golan, they would save the eternal city. Having conquered Gamla, the Romans went to Jerusalem, and after 3 years of siege, the eternal city fell.
Reuven, there's a question on that. There are lots of questions here, so let me try to sneak a couple in before you jump on. First of all, was it the Romans' intention, Deborah wants to know, to kill all that inhabitants, or was it just to make a stand?
I would imagine that the aim of the Romans was to make sure that any city that defied and fought against the Romans would be punished by being defeated, by the captives taken away to slavery, which was their usual practice in other conquests. There were only really 4 or 5 cities in the Galilee that stood up to the Romans and fought the Romans, and they were not all treated like Gamla, where there were, here curiously, Josephus tells us, there were 2 survivors, 2 ladies who hide and escape the slaughter and are the only ones to survive, but he doesn't tell us anything more about them. However, I would think that if they would have thrown open their gates and not resisted the Romans, then slavery would have been perhaps the route that they would have gone. But in fighting against the Romans, and after the horrific defeat that they handed the Romans in the first attack, Vespasian, I would think, thought he had very little choice rather than to see total victory and no questions asked and no prisoners taken.
And we had a couple of questions and comments about that incredible Vespasian quote. I don't know if they're from coaches who want to deliver the same inspirational speed as you were suggesting. What's the source on the quote? Is that from Josephus?
From Josephus, who was already on the side of surrender to the Romans after he had been captured at Yotfat, the first battle place. So we don't know if he was an eyewitness to the events at Gamla, but he certainly knew firsthand about them. And everything he described, the buildings, the way Gamla looked, the walls, his fortification of the walls, absolutely accurate. In fact, Shmaryahu Gutman, just like Igal Yadin on Masada, with Josephus's book in hand, did the archaeology. Gutman did the same in Gamla with Josephus's descriptions of Gamla. You know, it's nowhere in the Roman Empire were so much war remnants found anywhere in one battle. There were more than 2,000 ballistra, basalt cannonballs, stone cannonballs, more than 1,600 iron arrowheads, grappling hooks, bits and pieces of Roman armor and helmets, tremendous amount of war material found, and a lot of it in the synagogue itself, because there was evidence that the synagogue was actually used when the influx of other villagers come into Gamla and there's nowhere to stay. They stayed in the synagogue, and we find that there are 100 cannonballs in the synagogue and many arrowheads. And also small little fireplaces and so on, to give evidence that there were families living in the synagogue during this war. It sort of gives a lot of I would say weight to Shmariau's quote of not understanding why they were so determined in their defense until reading the inscription of the coins minted, incidentally, primitively minted. 7 or 8 of them were found in Gamla itself, and then later on a couple of others. One made its way even to Alexandria in Egypt, so there must have been someone who transported one of these coins that were actually minted in Gamla.
All right, well, keep the questions coming. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Reuven, I know you've got a lot more material you want to show us, so go ahead and proceed with the rest of the tour.
Terrific. I want to show you on the way to our hike, once again, so that you can understand what I mean by collapsing houses. Look at that slope. And if you imagine the houses on that slope, built like a deck of cards stacked in terrace fashion. And if the top one starts to collapse, it slides down like a slippery dip all the way down to a very deep canyon. Here we have a model. Of course, this is a model of a Roman catapult, not for the ballistra stones, but for arrowheads. Arrows put in those boxes, and then with a sinew rope, twisted and twisted, will fly off and send those arrows over the walls of any defense. In the next slide, you'll see the ballistra balls. We found, as I said, more than 2,000 of them in Gamla. Incredible amount of lava cannonballs. And here's another indication of how the houses, one on top of the other, if the top roof falls, it falls like dominoes all the way down. Enough of war. And for now, we're going to do a little bit of nature, a little bit of a hike it's actually 35, 40-minute hike to the tallest waterfall in Israel as part of the Gamla Nature Reserve, 51 meters in height. And let's start our walk. I hope you brought your walking shoes on. We're going to hike to the Gamla Waterfalls. It's a very pleasant hike, actually. Even in the summer, it can be done because it's level ground. We'll pass by some later Byzantine remains, and but on our way we meet a friend, armor-coated against any Roman attack.
You couldn't have scripted that any better, Reuven.
On the way, we will see some of the nature, and this is, as you can see, before the rains. This hike. And one of the spectacular things we're going to see on the way are fields of dolmens. What are these dolmens? They're usually two upright, enormous stones with a flat slab of a stone weighing tons placed above them. used as tombs in the early Bronze Age.
Mhm.
We have 700 of them around Gamla. And there are literally thousands in the Golan Heights. And some of them really enormous. In fact, so large that some people have suggested that these are not normal human being tombs, because how would they be able to lift these heavy rocks and without lifting equipment and so on and place them? As I said, most of them are much larger than what you're seeing here. Some people have suggested that, well, maybe this may be a hint about the giants that the Bible sometimes talk about that lived in the area of Bashan, which is the Golan Heights. So maybe there were giants here 7,000, 8,000 years ago, who knows? And on our way, we'll actually cross by one of the two streams that creates the waterfall that we're going to be viewing. And that's the Gamla stream that we shall cross here. You see parts of the Gamla stream already. And it joins up with the Daliot stream. And when we get to the observation point, you're going to actually see the tallest waterfall in Israel, 51 meters. We're going to zoom in a second on where we're going to be walking to. The observation point. We're not there yet, but we're just going to have a quick look at it before we get there. That's the observation point. But as I said, we've got to walk here to really see it. High cliffs, tall cliffs, sheer, with some raptors nesting in the cliffs, but we've got another hike coming up for you where we will actually visit the raptors. But here you see a view of the stream again, and the walk to and the view of the Gamla Waterfall. As I said, the tallest waterfall in Israel, 51 meters. I see a question in the meantime. How much of the remains of Gamla were found intact? Has there been any reconstruction? Yes, there has been some reconstruction, not extensive reconstruction, but there has been some reconstruction to give the visitor a bit of an idea of, if this stone fell here, it must have belonged there and replaced above. But no extensive reconstruction. Like Masada, wherever there has been reconstruction, it is marked. And because no one wants to fool you that this is the way it was found. But it was found pretty much the way you see it, because of course the destruction was pretty total, and it was never resettled until away from it. There are some Byzantine and later Muslim structures, but not on Gamla itself. It's a nice shot of the still of the Gamla Waterfall. And since we're on a nature trip, I want to quickly show you another hike. Here's a still of the dolmen, and now we're going to take a very quick look at, in Israel, we have some 60 couples of Griffin Vultures. We used to have thousands. Pilgrims in the 1800s and in the early 1900s would write about the tremendous quantities of these birds all over, especially where there are sheer cliffs like in Gamla. But they are today an endangered species, and they're an endangered species because of a lot of things: poaching, electrocution with electric wires. In the 50s and 60s, secondary poisoning when the herbicides and poisons were used to keep scavenging animals out of agricultural areas, and then their carcasses would be eaten by the vultures, and the secondary poisoning. So they became an endangered species. And since then, we've taken very seriously the need to conserve these animals, and we take it very seriously. I want to show you a short video of the flight of some of these Griffin vultures. They can come up to 1 meter in length, and their wingspan can go up to 2.7 meters, which is pretty large bird. They're coupled, and they're very faithful as couples. So there's no multiple breeding and so on. Each couple nests and the eggs are laid on sheer cliffs, and thus in order to be properly protective of them, some of them are actually tagged. You're going to see one or two of the birds that are flying as we capture them with these tags. Here's one with a tag, as you can see, that can be followed and kept abreast of. And it's a very good thing because this way it was discovered not at Gamla, but in some other place in the Judean wilderness towards the Negev, where we have a smaller community of Griffin vultures. As I said, the majority of them, 40 couples, are in Gamla, and the other 20 couples are spread mainly in the Judean and Negev area. And thanks to the tracking of these birds, a particular event that Wayne was talking about takes place. I'm not going to spill the beans until we actually get there, but a particular event takes place that it's quite startling, actually, quite surprising. And well, as I said, we'll wait to see how what extreme measures this country will go through to make sure that a species doesn't become extinct, the Griffin vulture.
Reuven, people are asking about the Hebrew name for the vulture.
Nesher.
Yeah, someone
Nesher.
guessed it. Yeah, correct.
Nesher is the Hebrew name for Griffin vulture. You know, Wayne, we're going to have to speed through the.
Keep going.
We're going to have to speed.
I know
through,
we have tons of questions coming through, but I agree. I think we need to keep running to make sure we get to the end.
Okay, so Katsrin, I'm going to really run through this quickly. Katsrin has been in the news this week because the government just decided that it wants to double the population of the new capital of the Golan, Katsrin, from 8,500. It wants to triple it to 24,000, 25,000 within 5 years. Some 7,000 houses are going to be built in Katsrin to house the enlarged population. And the idea is to double the population of all of the Golan Heights within 5 years. There's an overview of the new capital of Katsrin. It's a beautifully planned city, very modern. No electric cables up in the ground, as you can in the air, as you can see, all underground. All the no satellite dishes and so on. It's all built in underground, but very, very modern city. And I want to go through these slides quickly to get to ancient Katsarine, which is joined by modern Katsarine on that walkway that you just saw into a village from the Talmudic period. Katsarine, the ancient Katsarine, was a village that started off in maybe the Talmudic Mishnaic area, age 300 CE. A synagogue from that period is built upon by a later synagogue from around the 500s. until, of course, the entire village is destroyed by the horrific earthquake that destroys so much else. Destroys Bet Shan, it destroys so much else in the country. In 749, the tremendous earthquake that lays ruins to Katsrin and so many other places. What you're looking at here is the synagogue in Katsrin, and here, unlike the synagogue in Gamla, this one is oriented towards Jerusalem, because now it is a place of worship. Now, when I say now, I'm talking about 300 AD or CE. It's already a place of worship with a Torah ark and a Torah scroll. So it has to be oriented towards Jerusalem so that the worshippers who are sitting on stone benches around can be facing the right direction at the proper time. We're going to quickly go through the slides here. Another slide of the synagogue with 2 rows of 4 columns holding up a second floor, women's gallery. And what we've done with this Talmudic village is to rebuild it. Here we actually rebuilt, picked up all the pieces and put them together to put back together a Talmudic village. Here you're seeing some of the elements in the synagogue, and once again notice the similarity between these capitals, at least from one side, and the Solomonic and Davidic capitals that you see on the 5 shekel coin. We're going to quickly see some of the reconstruction of the houses in Katsarine, ancient Katsarine, where you'll see names on some of the houses. And where did we get the names from? From the tombs in the graveyard that we found from actual people. In fact, there's one house that actually a lintel survived that marked it as the Bet HaMidrash of Rabbi Eliezer. And it's very interesting because it gives us, as we see the slides going through, it gives us a throw into the Talmud, because there's a discussion in the Talmud of what are new shoes? Should new shoes be worn on the Sabbath, and what are new shoes? And the Talmud, in its discussion, talks about new shoes being shoes that have been worn no further than the Midrash, the Bet HaMidrash, the study hall of Rabbi Elazar, the caper maker, to the synagogue, which is a very short distance in Katsrin. And we found the synagogue in Katsrin, and we found the house of Rabbi Elazar, the caper maker. So we know exactly what distance the Talmud was talking about when they talk about if the shoes are worn further than that distance, they're no longer new. Just an interesting tidbit about here you see, of course, total rebuilding of the and restocking of the houses to give an idea of what it used to be like. And you'll notice that the implements, of course, that for threshing, the sled that you see there for threshing, and other implements of the house that we used at that time. And of course, in order to save space, you'll see that there is an upstairs as well. And in the next couple of slides, you'll see that you have a sort of hanging pantry. And this is where you kept the valuables, the wine and the olive oil, in a cool place, in a sort of a cellar, your wine cellar. And here your sleeping room. And the courtyard for work, of course. And overall of some of the building structures, some of you may recognize those to the left middle of that slide, the windows that separate the living area from the courtyard working area. And this is a typical from the 1st century CE that existed all the way through the Mishnaic and Talmudic period, of the type of communal housing of courtyard and internal. And once again, we come back to olive oil. I wanted to talk a little bit about olive oil production, but we don't have time for that. You're seeing here an olive oil crush, and Katsrin was also famous, like Gamla or Gamala, for its olive oil during the Talmudic period. So for at least 500 years, from the first century all the way through to the 6th century, the Golan Heights was famous for its olive oil. We're now the bean press, and we're going to, Wayne, would you like to introduce the gift that you have for everyone that talks about what we were talking about with conservation of wildlife?
Yeah, we'll we got a couple minutes. I'll take a couple of these questions first, and then we'll end on the I think the little New Year's message we're going to give. I mean, you've captured so many of the beautiful parts of this Tiul for everyone. This trip, the nature, the history, the connection to the Talmud, the connection to the battles that were fought on this ground, and then preceding that, long before these beautiful dolmens that you showed. What is it about? First of all, how accessible is the site today? I've been on this Tiul many times. People want to know, can they get there and take the trip itself? It seems like I was surprised people asked that question.
Very, very accessible. In fact, there are 5 different hikes one can take at Gamla itself. One or two of them are for strenuous and for good walkers, and that's the hike into the ruins themselves. Very well worth it. I mean, it's a short hike, but it's very steep on the ancient pathway into the ruins, through the synagogue and through the ruins of the collapsed houses and to the towers themselves. That's the hard hike. There's a longer, easy hike from the Dalayot Springs all the way through to the nature reserve in Gamla. That's about a 3-hour, 4-hour hike. And then there's the short hikes, like the Waterfall Hike, which is about a 45-minute hike each way. It's the same way back that it is there. And the very short half-an-hour hike there and back to the Vulture Trail to actually see the nesting place of the Griffin Vulture. Eagle in Hebrew is Ait, but the Griffin Vulture is Nesher.
Reuven, there was a question about the source of the waterfall. Where is the water coming from?
One comes from the east of the Golan, from a spring that creates the Dalayot spring that comes all the way through, and the other comes from the Gamla stream, and they join up together before the waterfall and they're actually part of the creation of the canyon that cuts Gamla into its camel shape on both sides, and they come down and create the waterfall.
So there was actually a question, I don't know if you know the answer to this, about the life expectancy of these Griffin vultures. Unlike the migratory birds, these guys stay at home when they can, right?
Exactly. I'm not sure of the life expectancy, and I don't want to have a silly guess at it. But they lay eggs. The females, incidentally, the males and the father and mother, they're, what's the word, monogamous. If one of them goes, then that's the end of the line.
Well, that's actually a pretty good segue in the life expectancy of these beautiful, beautiful creatures, regardless of the Hebrew name. There's some debate on the Hebrew term being a general term for both eagles and vultures, but in a bird by any other name still soars as beautifully, shall we say. And when Reuven came across this incredible clip recently from our friends at ITA Israel Television, we thought that this was exactly the kind of inspiring message from Israel that people needed to see. So I won't give it much more of a hype than that. I mentioned it at the forefront. We all wanted to share something inspiring to accompany all these incredible images of oil presses and wine presses and nature hikes and the incredible birds, the raptors that you showed here today. So we want to now just show this little clip before we sign off and send everybody off on with details about our next upcoming episodes and travels. So go ahead, let's play this one, and I think you'll all enjoy it.
And finally, there are many uses to which the Israeli army could put one of its high-tech drones, but the latest is saving the life of a rare and near-helpless vulture chick that lost its mother. So for some high-tech military hardware, a change of culture for a vulture.
She's a Griffin Vulture and a mother, and a member of a species so endangered she's tagged. But tragically, soon after these pictures were taken, she died when she flew into power cables. The conservationists who set up this Nest camera knew that the father left behind would not be able to rear their one chick on his own. And so a savior was sought and found. Called Mother Drone, it's been dropping food onto the cliff face ledge every 2 or 3 days. The use of the drone makes this a pioneering rescue operation, and there were plenty of risks.
It was very tense. We were very afraid that it would affect the chick and it might jump off the nest or the father would attack it.
The drone itself has been blurred because it belongs to the Israeli army and is classified top secret. But this precision flying is possible thanks to state-of-the-art technology that gives the operator a pilot's view. These are real drone pictures, but it's virtual reality created by a cutting-edge company that makes for this meticulous maneuvering in the tightest of spots.
You must be proud of what you and your company have done.
I am proud. It's another use case we never thought about. When you open a company, you build something for a certain market. You never think about all the possibilities that you might find.
Equipped with the right tools, it was a special Israeli army unit that actually conducted these unique, stealthy feeding missions. The major in command, who cannot be identified, told me that to prepare, they built an indoor mock-up of the ledge and nest and spent hours practicing on it before starting food drops for real. The chick has discovered that there's no such thing as a free lunch, but it's been able to fight off thieves and to grow thanks to the food provided by its father and by Mother Drone. The collaboration between the army, the tech company, and the conservationists got the ultimate endorsement this week when the chick flew for the first time. Job done. John Irvine, News at 10, Tel Aviv.
It's time for us to fly too.
Well, thanks to our friends at ITA. It was a great segment that reminds us that even in hard times, innovation sometimes creates all kinds of possibilities for the future. That's something that we've explored throughout this year, throughout this difficult years of ups and downs, where at moments we thought we were going to be able to hop on the plane, and a few people were blessed and able to do that. And most of us had to experience Israel through these virtual tours and the amazing stories of Am Yisrael, of the people of Israel who continue to dig deep and share from the archaeology in the past, but also to dream forward. And I think as we all, Reuven, are approaching 2022, not knowing exactly what to expect, the one thing we can expect is that Israel will continue to bring us amazing stories from the past, the present, and the future. Reuven, we're so grateful that you've been our tour guide, taking us to these amazing sites, reaching into the depths of the sources of these amazing stories, as well as the people who are bringing them alive today. So thanks again. We'll be with you again in January for more tours. We're looking forward to it. For those of you that are ready to start celebrating what many in Israel refer to it and Europe as Sylvester, I mentioned that term previously and people asked about it. In the United States, they call it New Year's Eve, and in other parts of the world. But if you want to start celebrating early, you can join us on the 29th, on Wednesday, and start your New Year's celebration with a concert from the Bookman Mehta School of Music in Tel Aviv University and the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra. It will be a phenomenal way to ring in the new year with music and celebration. And as we've done in the past, we've brought you the best of Israel, not through the lens of editing, but through the lens of allowing Israel stories to tell themselves and you to be able to introduce Israel to your friends and your family. We give this stuff away for free. We make it as accessible as we can so you can share Israel with all your loved ones. Reuven, have a happy new year, a healthy new year. Thanks for all your love and all your stories. And we want to wish all of our audience a happy, healthy new year, and to continue to be here with us and to continue to experience Israel this way with AIFL.
Shalom and a happy new year and a healthy new year to all.